right, I have completed through row 27 and our hat is growing and you can see the cute bear on it. It's hiding in there. At this point is where we go on to the ribbing that is at the crown, and you can on this original sample and on the pattern it carries on with the main color yarn, but you could actually choose to carry on with the contrast yarn too for the top to have a different color. That's just an idea if you'd like to do that. I'm going to go ahead and continue as is written with the main color, and this is going to just help you to refresh your memory on how to do that ribbing wrapping. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the contrast color yarn and pull that tail to the inside. Remove that out of the way. So now we're just left with our main color to work with. Okay, so here we are at peg 1, and I'm going to wrap around peg 1 and the back of peg 1 on the back loom. And then remember, we skip 2, wrap around the front of peg 4 and the back loom on peg 3, and then we skip just 1 here, skip 5 and wrap around the front of 6 and the back of 5. And you just continue in that manner until you have wrapped wrapped back to the beginning of the loom, skipping every other peg like this. Okay, here we are, peg 52, and then the back of peg 51. Then we're going to come over here to the front of peg 2 and the back of peg 2, the front of peg 3, and the back of peg 4. Now we're ready to go every other peg and fill in all of those empty ones that we skipped the last time around. And here we are at the beginning, and we end with the back of 52. And then you're going to just knit off every single one of these, the bottom loop over the top loop and off the top of the peg all the way around. And now you're just going to continue wrapping this way until you have reached row 38 on the chart, and that is 11 rows of ribbing. And meet me back here when those are all done, and we will remove this hat from the loom and do our finishing touches. Okay, I have completed all 38 rows. The ribbing is all done, and I'm ready to take this off of the loom. So in order to do that, I'm going to take the working yarn and we're going to wrap it around the outside of the pegs twice. And there, we've done that. I have 2 loops around, and I'm going to cut the yarn at this spot. Okay, so now I can move that aside. And I have a yarn needle here, and I'm going to thread this yarn onto my yarn needle. I'll make a kind of a big long tail because it's a lot of yarn here to deal with. All right, so now I like to use this version of a gathered bind off because it makes it just a little bit less bulky at the very top. And that's another reason why I did the ribbing at the top as well, is to try to help manage the bulk that you might end up with at the crown with a double knit gathered area. So what we're going to do first is gather all of the inner loops, and these are all the purl stitches on our ribbing. So what we're going to do, I'm going to turn this away from me so that I can see those loops from the inside. And remember, we have marked our first peg with this loop, so now I know where to begin threading through. Okay. And I'm using my loom tool too, just so that I make sure to get all of the strands of the yarn. Sometimes when you thread upwards with a needle, you don't catch all of the plies of the yarn, so I like to use my tool to do that as well. Okay, and if you can see, I'm releasing them from the loom as soon as I've got them on my needle here. Okay, now I've finished all the way around the inner loom, and I'm ready to begin the outer loom. But before I do that, I'm going to actually place a removable stitch marker. See, this one is a homemade one that is on an earring end, but there's many different kinds of things that you could use for this, and including just a piece of yarn tied on there too. It's really just something to mark the place between the inner loom's loops and the outer loom's loops, and this just helps us when we're cinching it in. Okay, so that just goes right in there, and then we continue to go around the loom again in the same direction that we knit in, and we're going to do the outer loom's loops now. Okay, that is the final stitch. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and just lift this out of the loom. Voila. I'll put this over here. Look how cute that is. This would be a really cute cowl too if you just bound it off like a regular straight edge, but it's so cute. I really do like how the brown bear turned out. I like him a lot. Okay, so now to finish this cast on edge, we are going to first cinch in the loops. I'm going to go ahead and remove this all the way because it's rattling a little bit. Okay, don't want there to be a distraction. All right, so we're going to first tighten in the inner loops all the way, and those are not the ones connected to the needle. They're the ones on the other side of the removable marker. And the reason the pearl ones go first is because pearl stitches naturally just like to suck inward, right? They're curved to go towards the inside of the work. And so that's why they're best to be gathered first, because that'll naturally pull them to the inside and help lessen that bulk. And so it makes a lot of sense to then do the knit stitches, which are made to naturally lean towards the outside of your work. Those should be gathered last on the outside. So they're the ones that are going to be seen. Okay, now, see, before I've fastened that in all the way, I'm going to make sure that I've got my pearl stitches in as tight as they can go. This is why this marker is extremely helpful. Okay, I found that out the hard way. And ended up with a tangled mess. So now I'm going to remove that, and we can go ahead and finish this. See, I have not released the pearl stitches, the tension on the yarn that's going to the pearl stitches. I'm still holding that tight as I can in my fingers, and now I'm pulling on the knit stitches yarn until I can release the pearl and just pull on everything. Careful, steady but even tension. You don't want to do this on too tightly because you don't want to snap your yarn, and it's really dangerous to do this on yarn that is more of a single ply or a roving yarn, because you could separate the yarn strands. So just be real careful while tightening that up. Okay, so now the next step is to thread through that little bit of opening to close it up. I did one side. Now we're going to come and do some from the other side. This is a kind of cast off that it's similar to one that Jeannie Phillips first came up with, and I have used it for gathering hats ever since because it is the best method out there, really. I love it. Okay, I think we got enough on the top. See how it's nice and closed? And actually, it's gonna lay really nice and flat like that. It's a really great technique. Okay, so I'm going to bring this to the inside of our knitting. All these strands on the inside will have to be woven in. We can do that later. For now, I'm going to go ahead and turn this inside out. Okay. Alrighty, so now there's a little bit of hole here, which is fine. It's on the inside. You don't have to worry about it too much, but I like to go through and do the same as I did on the front side and just close that up before I knot it. And see how everything just gets pulled in really tight. Okay, maybe one more time. Okay, good. Now I'm going to go ahead and knot it a couple times so it stays. I'm still holding tension on that part. I'm just going to make a little loop and thread through. This is the first knot. And then I do that a couple times. Just cinch it down. And there we go. Okay, perfect. And that end can get woven in. I'm just going to trim it a little shorter so it's easier to deal with later. Okie dokie. So here's our bear, and you can, from the inside, and you can see all these little yarn strands will need to be woven in. And I will give you an example of that just so you see how I weave in the ends. I give them little tugs to make sure that not too tight, because you don't want it to pull too much on the front side, but just enough that any loose stitches that might have happened are now tightened in. And then I'm thread that through the yarn needle. And I'm going to take this up. And what I do is I go through, I don't just go under the whole strand of yarn. I will break the plies through there because that just helps the yarn stay put that much better. And I try and go in the direction where the majority of the yarn color is going to be the one that I'm weaving in. So see, I pulled that through. Now I'm going to give it, I don't pull it tight. I'm going to actually stretch the project out a little bit and then let it rest. And that's where I leave that tension. Because that way, when the wearer has this on, they're going to stretch it on their head and it's going to be all, you need to have room to stretch a knitted garment. So if you keep this tight, as soon as they stretch it, your ends are going to pop out. So you want to be able to keep some looseness in there, and that'll keep your ends tucked in. I have never had any ends come out that I have done in this way. So I highly recommend it. So now I'm going back down towards the way we came from, and I'm going to do this again. Pull, and then just a little stretch tug so that it's not tight. And then I'm going to go up again. When the yarn gets a little shorter, see I didn't thread it onto my needle. What I'm going to do is thread it after I've sewn in, just in case it was too short to be able to stretch that far with my needle. You can go 3 or 4 times. However many times is good for you. Sometimes, or actually a lot of times, I will take this little end. See, I've gone like a Z, the shape of a Z. And I'm going to go back over one of the places that I've already sewn. Yes, which is right in here, and stitch right over top of stitches that I have already sewn to weave this end in. And that just it reinforces the weaving in of that end even more. So yeah, I like to do it about 4 times, really. So there we go. This is our 4th weaving in. Pull that through without pulling too tight, and there we go. And I'm just going to leave that little end sticking out, and that'll just keep it in place and looking nice. And from the front side, you cannot see that at all because we didn't go through the entire stitch. We just went through some of the plies of it, which holds it in place and keeps it invisible from this front side. Okay, so that's how you would weave in all your ends. Now to finish our cast on edge, let's do that. Get all these ends up here where they're not going to be in our way. Okay, so the cast on edge is, see, our very beginning loops are held in place with this green anchor yarn. And that's the reason why you want to use a contrasting color, so you can go back and see it really easily when the time comes to finish this off. Okay, so here is our beginning tail. Now I want to go around and finish these loops in the direction that will allow me to finish this last tail. It will be the last thing that I do. So I'm going to start going around this way and we'll end up with this tail. Okay, so looks like our first loop is right here. We're going to put our crochet hook right into that first loop and go to the second loop in line, and then just pull it through just like that. Then you're going to go to the next loop in line, which is this one right here. And you want to be careful not to accidentally snag the anchor yarn in with what you're doing. And you just go down the line and chain in all of those loops in order. Okay. Now see, I did that a little bit out of order than I did before, and I liked it the other way. Okay. Let's do this one first. There we go. And then this one. I like that better. Okay, looks like I'm going to do one more. Right there. And then I'm going to take this tail, and that is the last thing that gets pulled through our chain. Just to hold everything secure. And then this will get woven in onto the inside. Now our anchor yarn just pulls right out. Voila, it's removed. And now we have a gorgeous finished edge. See that? How pretty that is? Look at that. It's nice and tight and professional looking. There's no loose edges and it's still nice and stretchy. And we have a really, really cute looking hat with an adorable brown bear on it. Now all you have to do is weave in your ends and add a fluffy pom-pom, and you've got it made, and it's all done. And one more thing that I will mention is that if you wanted to put a little eye, like I did on this white and blue version, you could, I mean, it's cute without it really, but if you'd like to put that eye in the same placement as on the chart, you would just count down with the chart down to the proper stitch, or whichever stitch you prefer, but the one with the dot on it is where I put mine. And you would just bring the yarn up through the inside of the hat, make a knot out here, and then bring the tail end back down through, and then weave your ends in from the knot. And that's how the eye is made. All right, there we are. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to our next project at Getting It Paid and KB Looms. I'll see you soon.